what is up, guys? I'm here to cover that Q&A that I said I would be doing. I would have done it sooner, but unfortunately, Mr. Chance decided he was going to jump up on my camera when I was on the counter, knocked it off, broke the lens. So I've had to get a new lens, but we're good to go now. So as far as these questions, I kind of broke them down into a couple different categories, and I will put below the video times when I'm covering certain questions. I didn't get to all of them because I had like a lot of comments, but I tried to pick ones that were common questions that I get regularly and cover those. So we're going to start with cardio, and this was by Life by Kristen. She said she's doing HIIT. If I recall, it was a stair stepper and the bike, I think. But her muscles are staying sore. Should she switch to LISS? So HIIT, there's two things. First of all, any HIIT that's going to be lower body oriented, or any HIIT whatsoever, is going to have more of a propensity to cause muscle tissue breakdown versus LISS. So yes, in that you have to gauge how you're recovering, because obviously our weight training is going to be doing that as well, and our weight training takes priority over our cardio. So if you're not recovering and you're doing HIIT alongside your weight training, it's something to look at switching to LISS. You can also look at switching to the type of HIIT you're doing. There's a lot of different types. Most of them are lower body oriented, the ones we're familiar with as physique athletes or fitness people, the stair stepper, treadmill sprints, the bike. But there's also different forms. For example, I had toyed with the idea of doing sprints in a pool, like swimming sprints, this last prep. So if your lower body is staying sore, but you're finding really good results from HIIT, and you really enjoy HIIT, you can look at just changing the form. Connor asked just thoughts on overkill on cardio and how to increase closer to a show. So a common theme that I get from people, especially people new to dieting, is they're very quick to allow their emotions to make them pull calories fast, to add cardio fast, because a lot of them don't keep good records on how they're progressing as far as visually, as far as pictures, as far as tracking their weight. Or even if they do track their weight, they see acute fluctuations as something more than acute. If their weight is up, a pound one day, that freaks them out and they pull automatically. Whereas you have to look at long-term trends. That's usually where overkill comes from, because your body will adapt to cardiovascular exercise. So people will, automatically start off on 5 days a week at 30 minutes. And that might work for a week, and then they slow down. It slows down. They automatically add, they go to 7 sessions, 35 minutes a pop, and that just perpetuates to the point where they're doing 2 hours of cardio a day, and they're not really getting anything out of it. The same goes with nutrition. People pull too fast, and they see it as a linear process. It's just pulling, rather than potentially taking a diet break, rather than making sure during those pull phases that you're keeping metabolism online as much as possible by doing refeeds, by making sure that your performance in the gym is 100%, so we can keep that energy expenditure, going out, etc. So those are some thoughts on overkill on cardio. And in that, you want to start, especially cardio, you want to start with the least amount needed, and only add when you need it. Everyone's a little bit different, but I see more muscle tissue loss with excessive cardio than with pulling calories. Obviously, because you're intrinsically working that muscle during cardio, and it's a counter adaptive process to hypertrophy, that muscle tissue breakdown can occur more aptly. Your body, when you're doing cardiovascular exercise, your body wants to be cardiovascularly fit. And one way to do that is to have less mass to move. So that's, an adaptation. There's a lot of physiological mechanisms that enact during that to perpetuate that. AMPK is stimulated, but it's more apt to cause muscle tissue breakdown. So start with the least amount possible. Pull calories. Make sure metabolism is staying online by doing refeeds, potentially diet breaks, etc. And then add cardio from there. And cardio is the same way. Any client of mine can tell you, like, I don't start with 3 sessions a week, and then go to 5, and then go to 7. Usually it's very sporadic. Like, we'll have 3, and then I'll say, okay, take this week off. And then after that, I'll say, okay, the next 4 days do cardio at this amount, etc. So that the body, so we can kind of never allow the body to get super efficient at cardio. We want to be as inefficient as possible so it burns calories. The most energy expenditure we can have. I will also say it's lucrative usually to pull back if you can before a show, because most people, their body looks more rested. It just looks more alive, more healthy, more vibrant if you're not killing yourself with cardio into the show. I also find it's easier to load people without that variable involved. So if you can be ready 2 weeks out and pull back, that's good. So moving on to nutrition, J-Dub Fitness and Little Tump, these were kind of 2 similar questions. When you hit a plateau during cutting, how quickly should you decrease calories? Honestly, I think that I answered this last question. There's no set time frame. I think there's 2 things you have to look at. You have to look at where you are metabolically within the diet. If you've been pushing calories down for a long time and you're at a point, you're pretty low, you should, instead of decreasing calories, you should think of taking time to get metabolism back online so that that deficit is still a deficit. Because there is a point, survival mode, whatever, is kind of it's a misnomer, but there is a point that I see where we pull that the physiological mechanisms that are within the body to sustain life kind of go on high alert, and they don't want you to they don't want you to lose any more weight. So if you pull a certain point, like NEAT, which is non-exercise activated, just activity, just thermogenesis goes down, and you just don't see, the results that you want to. So it can't be a linear process. If you're down here, you need to think about actually reversing, diet break, refeeding, resting, and then going back in. Conversely, if you've just started, typically what you see, I typically will start, I'll pull 500 to 700 calories right off the bat. And usually we'll see weight loss. And a lot of that is just water weight. So you got to be cognizant of that. That'll go, because most of the calories are from carbs. That'll go for a week or 2. Give it a couple days. If you start hitting, if you don't hit new lows for say 4 days, gauge pictures. If they don't look any better, then you can start decreasing calories. But you don't want to chop off 500 because, you want to make sure that you're still having caloric leeway in the future to pull from. So, for example, you can pull 100, 200 calories, and then give it a couple of days and gauge, a week and gauge. And again, don't just use weight, use weight in pictures. So give it a little bit of time. Don't just pull, in a day. Dr. Dan Abs asked a question about omitting carbs pre-workout. I'm going to make this really simple. I was going to dichotomize this because he said during a bulking and during a cutting phase. I was going to dichotomize this and approach it from both. But it's pretty simple. GH release doesn't matter. Insulin doesn't matter. What matters more so is how you perform training-wise. If you train like a turd with carbs pre-workout, omit them. If you feel like death, while training without carbs, put some dang carbs pre-workout. Like any endogenous GH release, first of all, if you felt like a sack of turds while training, I can guarantee your cortisol is going to be higher than it should. So any GH release is going to be just canceled out by the cortisol rise. So you want to make sure that performance is number one. And that's where carbs are implemented, where they're going to help you train best. For example, I'll just give you an example. This is something kind of out of the ordinary that I've been doing this off season, because in the past my food gets so high that when I hit carbs through workout, I'm just lethargic during my workout. So I eat in the middle of the night now. I eat like 150 grams of carbs in the middle of the night, go back to bed. I have that rise in glucose, that rise in insulin, and I get up and then I go immediately train. Now, I have an intra-workout drink, but because I'm sipping that, it doesn't really cause the high rise in glucose and the insulin response, so I don't get tired and lethargic. So that allows me to get my food in and to perform it as best as I can. Soul Status asked how to keep your abs year-round, and this is really simple. He mentioned reverse dieting. He doesn't really know how to reverse diet. Eat within your metabolic capacity. That's pretty much what it is. If you're getting fat, you're overeating. It's that simple. You need to be consistent with reversing. If you're doing that, you're still getting fat, take your reverse slower. I mean, that's pretty much what it is. There's no magic formula. There's no magic secret. I think that people like for me, for example, I'm putting up all these pictures of food and stuff, and I have my abs, but it's because that's where my metabolic capacity is. I can do that. If I wasn't in that situation, I wouldn't do that. You just have to be realistic with yourself and be honest with yourself. If you're a fat ass, there's probably a reason why. I hate to be so blunt, but outside of issues internally, which are rarer than people make out to be, you're probably just being dishonest with yourself. So an easy one, Alicia Casanova asked, fats pre and post, they're absolutely fine. And I utilize them most times for the reason I talked about earlier, negating a high rise in insulin, a high rise in glucose, because it'll actually slow that down and allow most people perform better. And people perform better on a combo of fats and carbs. Usually, the only time that I would omit fats is if you were very low caloric-wise or fats-wise, or carbs-wise, any macronutrient, and you had to allot food elsewhere in the day. I would rather, for most people, again, I would rather have carbs peri-workout, and so they're not starving the rest of the day, negated as much as possible. We would put those fats elsewhere. So these are just general and train questions. So I believe it's Abigail Grace Binney asked most effective fat loss methods for general clients. I'm going to make this super simple. She lists like HIIT versus LISS, carb cycling, etc. I'm going to make it super, super, super simple. Whatever you can be consistent with. Truly, if you're in a deficit, if you're losing weight, and you're consistent with it, you enjoy it, stick with it. Because if you hate what you're doing, you are not going to be consistent, and it's not going to bring you the long-term results that an approach that you were consistent with would. Prep clients are different. Sometimes they just have to deal with stuff. But for a general client, especially people that don't have the athlete mindset and are more likely to fall off or be inconsistent, you want to make it as easy as possible. And I hate saying that. But it's true. I mean, if you can make things just your ability to perpetuate them on a daily basis, it's for anybody, even for an athlete, it's going to be easier for that person to follow it out, indefinitely. All right, guys. So last question here. Matt Lewis and EJO24. These are similar questions. Best split for legs, and then how to approach stubborn body parts. So first and foremost, the evidence shows that the more you can hit a muscle group and actually recover from it, the more chance for growth. Now, you have to modulate that with volume and intensity. Now, if you're doing legs 3 times a week and you're doing 24 brutal work sets, you're not going to recover. So you have to be realistic with your recovery ability. And that's going to be dependent on so many variables. It's going to be, your personal genetics, your gender, are you getting optimal sleep? Is your diet on point? Are you in a deficit or a surplus? Are you utilizing supplements? How is stress outside the gym, etc. So you need to listen to biofeedback, take an inventory of how those things are, and then go from there. You should feel good. Training is tough, if you're training intensely, but you shouldn't feel like a sack of turds every time you go to the gym. You should be getting stronger over the long run, so you just need to watch those things. An arbitrary answer to this that I follow for most people is if they're having trouble with a muscle group, I start them on twice a week. We gauge how things go and then go from there. Typically that twice a week isn't super heavy all the time, because we have to watch your nervous system, we have to watch your joints, but twice a week is typically how we go. Sometimes we can go into 3, sometimes we reduce to once every 5 days, etc. And then beyond that, as far as stubborn body parts, look at what you're currently doing and do the opposite or something very different than what you're doing if what you're doing is truly not working. Now, I also think there's 2 main approaches to training. There's volume and then there's progressive overload. And I think that utilizing both in phases is great, because with progressive overload, you're going to get stronger. So you can do that for a while. Eventually your joints are going to feel it. So you switch over to volume and utilize that strength within the rep range that a volume approach is going to entail. And that's going to be great. It'll give your joints a break, give your nervous system a little bit of a break, and continue your growth. So anyways, that's what I got, guys. There will be more Q&As in the future, so stay tuned.